So I just got back from talking with my friends, and every time we have a conversation, it usually ends up in us talking about investments and bad ones and good ones. And overall, by the way, my friends are about like 50 years old and above. That should tell you something about myself, okay? And we got to talking about our good investments and our bad investments. And in reality, one of my friends told me basically, hey, Tommy, my best investments were basically my wife, my kids, and also my health. And we all concord. We all said, yes, that is true. That must be a good investment and so on. And my other friend then said, oh, also the house. The house is also a great investment. And I was like, yeah, that's true. A house is a good investment. He said, I paid off my house in 6 years. My other friend paid off his house in 15 years. And we all agreed that not having to worry about a mortgage is definitely a big win. But then we started talking about and reflecting on the bad investments we've made over the years. And by the way, in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what these 3 investments are. And we all agreed that these are terrible, horrible, horrific investments that you want to avoid because they can make a person that's almost on their way to financial freedom be broke very quickly if they're not actually careful. And by the way, I will say something, okay? When it comes to a wife, kids, and yourself, those things in a way are the most important thing. The spouse you pick, and that's why I'm taking my time with this stuff, the spouse you pick is going to make a big difference in your life as far as, for example, if you have a successful life or if you don't have a successful life, because that matters a lot. Your kids, yourself, everything basically matters a ton. But I want to focus on this video on the negatives because in reality, if you know what to avoid, you can do very well in life also. And as always, guys, like this video on top of also subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Now, the very first thing we all agreed on was basically, with no doubt, one of the worst investments is usually a car. And we all agreed, okay? And they started talking about it and they were like, hey, I spent $42,000 on a brand new car. 10 years later, I'm selling it for basically $6,000. That was basically an infinity. My other friend says, yeah, I spent also around the same amount of money. And then guess what? It goes down in value. And then I also had to sell it because eventually anything with wheels will depreciate. It will go bad and things will not be that good. But then something happened here, something that I did not agree with. And I also mentioned, hey, maybe that's not all the way true, but you know, I'm not in the business of making people look stupid in front of people, so I can pull my friend aside at a later time and explain this, but not in public, obviously. And he says, although a car is a bad investment, it is a necessary evil. And I don't agree with that. And here's why. Because yes, depending on where you live, our car is going to be super important. If you're in New York, doesn't matter. If you're in Florida, definitely does matter because you definitely need a car. However, the idea that you need to buy a new car is completely foolish. And here's why, because the minute you buy a new car, when you walk out of the driveway, it depreciates. 5 years later, it's worth like 50% less. And then a few years later, it's worth basically almost worthless. And one thing I realized when I was doing research and picking out my car and the car I was going to buy and all these things was basically some cars are built to last and some cars are just built to make money. Let me explain, okay? When Toyota, Honda, Mazda, when these people make cars, they build them, of course, to make money, but they also build them with longevity, quality, and to make sure the customer understands, hey, this piece of work here is going to last you a very long time. To me, that's awesome. But some people out there, for example, the BMWs, the Mercedes, and so on, they build cars not really to last, but just to make money because you know there's a massive premium, they charge extra, and it's not like the cars are better quality, but it's because basically people buy those things as badges of wealth, when in reality, all I can tell when you drive a Mercedes is basically you have $50,000 less in your pocket. And we all agreed on that too. And the idea is, when it comes to buying a car, how do you buy so it doesn't make you broke? The answer is very simple. If you buy a Toyota, these cars can usually last you between 10 to 20 years, even longer potentially. You know, one study that I basically did was whenever I go out there and I'm driving, I look at all of the vehicles on the street and I notice one thing. Usually those older vehicles, they're Toyotas, they're Hondas, they're Mazdas. These cars, they tend to last a very long time. All of my neighbors, except my front neighbor, He has a Mitsubishi, which I'm not a big fan of, but back then maybe they were good. But all of my other neighbors, which by the way are also in their 50s and so on, I'm telling you guys, I'm like biologically young, but like I'm super old. I'm like the oldest young man you'll ever see in your entire life. But they all drive Toyotas. And they're all like from the 1990s, like those Toyotas. And guess what? They work fine, they run like butter, and they're perfect. And the car I drive is also a Toyota. So Tommy, are you telling us that the best car to buy is a Toyota that's like 20, 30 years old? The answer is no, that's not what I'm telling you. But I am telling you though, for example, that you buy the best car that's built to last. I won't say Toyota because although Toyota is that car right now and Honda and Mazda, it could be different by the time you actually buy a car or by the time you actually find this video. So I would say go to JD Powers, which is basically a review website for cars and so on, and look up these cars. What are the best cars in the market? And you want to buy a car that's around 5 years old. This is very important because when you buy a car that's 5 years old, automatically you're buying it for 50% off the MSRP price. MSRP price? Yeah, the recommended manufacturer sales price or whatever. You're buying it at a steep discount. That's the point. So if you're buying it at 50% off and you're only like around 25% in the actual life of the actual car, you can actually use it for a lot longer, around another 15 years. And that to me is awesome. That's actually beautiful. This way, you get to drive a quality vehicle for a very long time and not have to worry about the car breaking down. That's awesome to me. Now that's the first thing, and that's how you do it. And I do recommend when you buy a car, you buy a car and you pay cash for it. You might say, Tommy, I can't afford a 5-year-old car in cash. They're very expensive still. The answer is, well, you buy an older car. 1990s, 2001, 2005, or whatever it is, and you buy this little pickup, whatever it is, and then in those 5 years while you're using it, it might not be the best thing ever, but you save up money, so when you're actually ready to trade in that car, you buy something nice for yourself. But not being able to afford it is not an excuse to get a loan on something. Makes no sense. Now, the second thing that we all agreed on unanimously was basically a boat, okay? Now I have a friend, and he owns a boat, and he makes a good amount of money, so I've been told. He has some business and so on. He's actually a real estate agent, and it's pretty cool stuff. And I always say, the best way to be on a boat is to enjoy your friend's boat. But I would never recommend that you actually buy a boat yourself because in reality, it's not a good investment. And here's why I'm going to say it's not a good investment. Because for the average person, they're not going to get enough use out of it. Now, if you're out there 24/7 in the water, you're always out there doing this and doing that, you might get your money's worth, but you have to have a very good income to actually get your money's worth. I have two neighbors, one in front of me and the other one, which is basically like 3 blocks away from me. They both have boats, and I've never seen these boats be moved. They just basically sit there idle. And that's what I want to talk about, okay? Because when you have a boat, you have maintenance. The average maintenance on a boat is around $2,000 a year. You also have parking. If you're going to park this boat in the water, you got to pay for that too. You also have insurance, which is around $300 a year. And on top of that, you also have the idle time. All that time you spend not using that boat, those parts tend to deteriorate. If you're going to get GPS and bonuses and so on, those things also cost money. One of my friends said, Tommy, the best 2 days to have a boat is basically the day you buy the boat and the day you sell the boat, because it makes no sense. And he told me, Tommy, I was going to buy a boat, and luckily I didn't buy a boat. And I was like, why? He's like, I don't remember why, but I'm very happy that I did not buy the boat. And by the way, here's what I will say. If you have money to burn and you're basically financially free and you want to buy a little boat to go fishing, no problem with that, but you understand you're basically spending money on this thing, right? That's the whole point. Now, for me personally, I'd rather rent a boat like for $150 a day or go on this little thing or whatever whenever I do use a boat or go on my friend's boat. But on average, I'm not on that boat. It makes no sense. So that's the idea. Now, and by the way, just because you use a boat doesn't mean you should get a boat. Because if you can't afford a boat, you shouldn't get a boat. Okay, does that make sense? It's pretty simple stuff. Now, the third thing we basically are, by the way, the average boat cost total per year is around $4,300. If you invest that, that's a lot of money. Now, number 3, guys, we all agreed on this too, which is basically getting loans, revolving credits, and credit cards. And the idea was that although my friends, they paid off their houses in 6 years and 15 years, which by the way, is above average, the answer is one of my friends did end up getting, for example, a personal loan and paying around 25% on it. And I assume that he got that for business, although I didn't pick that much because, again, we're in public and that's not really good hygiene to be pickering and this in public and so on, okay? But I'm assuming that's what he used it for because these friends, they work in construction and I respect them a lot. Now, the idea is very simple. You might say, Tommy, to pay 25% on a loan, that's pretty crazy. But on average, people are spending 15%, 25% on their credit cards, 35% sometimes. And the answer is, it's impossible to get rich when you're paying unattractive interest rates. Now, what I mean by unattractive is basically, if you're paying anywhere above 3, 4%, you're paying too much, or 5%, you're paying too much, okay? Because to get money from the S&P 500, which is basically a very normal investment, you're looking at 11.88% from inception. Maybe 10% last 50 years, maybe 11% last 70 years, so on like that, okay? So the idea is, if you're paying somebody 15% or 18% or 25%, you're not really going to get rich doing that. And that's why Warren Buffett says, for example, there was this lady, fun story here. A lady approached Warren Buffett and asked him, what do you think I should do with my money? And he says, well, do you owe any money? He says, yes. I mean, she says, yes. She says, yeah, I owe a credit card. I'm paying 18% on it. And he says, grab your money and pay that off because I don't even know how to make 18% of my money. That's a real story, by the way. He says it. And then she says, what do you think I should do with my kids? You know, with their money, like how should I help them with their money? She says, and Warren Buffett says, you should have your kids lend you money because you're paying so much money for it. That's going to be the best investment you can basically make, and you're paying it gladly. And that's the whole idea, guys. It's impossible to get rich paying somebody so much money, okay, when it comes to debt. And by the way, the overall concept here is if you want to become wealthy faster, and when I say faster, it doesn't mean it's easier. You know, Jim Rohn says all the time, what's easy is something that you can do. And if it's something you can do, it's also easy not to do. It doesn't mean, though, it's going to be, for example, no type of effort. It does require effort here. So what I mean is, if you have no debt, which should be your main goal, everything except the mortgage, pay that off. Then on top of that, you save money for emergencies, 3 to 6 months. Then, you, for example, you start investing 10, 20%, and you try to pay off your home faster, buying a home you can actually afford. You can be financially free a lot faster than you actually think. The reason I think my friend ended up, for example, having to borrow money to start a business is basically a lot of the times people tend to skip steps. They want to start a business, but they're still in debt somewhere else. They want to start a business, but they have no emergency fund. They want to start a business, but the only way to do it is basically borrowing money. Just take your time with it. It's not like, you know, I'll say this, I'm impatient too sometimes, but it's important to learn how to delay gratification. It's important to learn how to wait until you can actually do something. One thing my mom says all the time is basically, Tommy, take your time. Step by step, things will get done. But if you rush into something, rushing is a sure way usually to end in fracase. I can't say it in English. It's like, in English it basically means rushing is a sure way to end up basically messing things up, okay? It's not a good thing. So take your time with it, make your decisions properly so you don't end up being one of those people that start a business and become part of statistics saying, hey, most businesses don't survive because basically you didn't prepare correctly. But that's it, guys. Thanks for watching this video, and avoid these things like the plague, and please don't buy a boat. But if you do buy a boat, I'm your friend, invite me on it, all right? Thanks for watching. As always, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified, and comment down below if you made it all the way to this point of the video, 50. Because I know my friend's average age is around 50. On top of that, up here is another video. Over here is my face. Please subscribe. And as always, Long Term Team officially out.